Hello, this is Alan Garrett with After Comics, and I thought I'd just do a quick video on the Submariner with a backstory. My mother, who was born in 1931, was a huge comic collector, and I've known this since I was very, very young. I knew that Mom collected the Submariner. She told me who the Submariner was and how much she loved the Submariner. She also collected, to a lesser extent, the Human Torch and Captain America. My mother had a newsstand, which she grew up outside of New York City. There were newsstands just about on every corner, and she went to one particular newsstand, and the gentleman there knew my mother at the age of, 10 years old, 11 years old, was a big comic book reader. And by the way, she didn't really refer to herself as a collector, but she read. But she was also meticulous about holding on to everything. Now, I know I've told part of this story before, but bear with me. By the way, the Submariner, of course, was relaunched in the Silver Age in Fantastic Four '4. Started sharing Tales to Astonish with the Hulk with issue 70. And in 1968, he got his own title. All right, we all knew that stuff. Anyway, so Mom collected the Submariner, and she cherished the books. She knew all about it. When I started collecting the Submariner in 1971, she felt his artwork was different, which was true. Bill Everett drew him very differently, and later on, when Bill Everett came back to the title, you could see the difference. But Mom collected the Submariner, and she loved it. And she was about 15 years old and left for school. Now, she came back to her Submariner collection, and it was gone. She kept it in a bedroom drawer in her room in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And we'll push these guys out of the way. And the drawer was empty. And she inquired to my grandmother, where was it? And my grandmother said, well, for goodness sakes, I threw those out. They were dangerous. My mother was like, how were they dangerous? She said a next door neighbor had claimed that girls who read comics, now we're talking about 1944 here, 1945. Girls that read comics would get warts on their hands. And I think my mother did have a wart, or my grandmother suspected she did. And she decided that the next door neighbor's logic made a lot of sense. So out went the comics. Of course, as hearing this story as a 10-year-old, it horrified me. See how it horrifies me in my 60s, as a matter of fact. But that's why the books are so rare. That's just one story of many stories about people who actually read comics and had the stories thrown out. My dad had a similar story. I'll get to that in another video. But this time, this is about my mother and her love of the Submariner. I asked my mom one time, I said, how many comics do you think you had total? And she gave a very vague answer, probably between 50 and 60. And if she collected between 1940 and 1945, that would make sense. When you add up the number of Submariner books that were out there, including all of his appearances in the Human Torch. So that made a lot of sense to me. All right, move these out of the way, and we'll start with the box art. But I was fortunate because my mother was very supportive of my comic collecting. A lot of people have asked me how I held on to my books. Simple. My mother never threw them out. My father would hide them from time to time when my grades were poor. But my mother basically made sure they were taken care of. Even when I went to college, she wouldn't let any relative or anybody go into my room, which was a good thing. That's one of my favorite covers, by the way. I don't know why. I've always loved it. Love the box art. Love the box art. Shannon said recently in a video that any comic book with a 20-cent price tag from Marvel is a win-win. And he was right. These, starting with issue 39, were mine off the stands. They're not perfect condition. I used to think all my books were in mint condition because I bought them. But you look back at them through the years and you go, yeah, you read them too. And early on, I allowed friends to read my books too. That ended pretty quickly. I got a book that was given back to me like Lent, I'm sure, and very fine, and I got it back in good condition. Blah, blah, blah. We've all heard that story. Move this out of the way. Final round. I'm in the comic room, by the way. I have a desk in the corner that I just use for, going through and bagging and boarding and stuff like that. So that's where I am right now. But back to the final part of the Submariner. So, yeah, some duplicates. That was natural. I don't think I was any kind of an investor when I was a kid. I just, bought duplicates sometimes, usually to trade. And sometimes nobody wanted to trade that book, so you just had it. Never regretted it. Glad I had it. The first comic convention I went to in 73, I bought my mom a Submariner superhero pin from 1966. And as sweet as she is, she said, why don't you hold on to it for me? Well, I did. And this past summer, in June, at the age of 90, my mother passed away. Thanks for watching.